Good morning. How's everybody doing? We're switching it up today. Today, even when you reach this video, you're in for a treat. Today, I want to talk about innovation, inventing things. I like to think I invent ideas, not necessarily the way they are, but simply by examining the definition the way I see it. My mind thinks differently. I look at things differently. I see patterns that most people don't seem to grasp. I do some of these things. And it's not all just crazy thought processes. I come up with great ideas all the time. Because, from my perspective, if one thinks about changing themselves positively, when you run out of things to work on for yourself, and you never run out, so don't think I'm saying I'm some kind of. But when you're no longer doing bad things in your life, and your reactions are now to new things, and how badly they affect you, at this point you could shoot me and I probably wouldn't be negatively affected. Other than the health concern that I wouldn't even like lose sleep or think someone was trying to kill me. I just got shot, whatever. So it's that perspective. But it's led me to some conclusions that I probably would have never found if I would have been thinking like this. So I'm going to share one this morning. And I didn't put it in the title. You got to listen through some of my bullshit in the morning before you get a chance to hear what I have to say. But anything that's worth doing is never easy. And so I think 2 minutes is long enough for you to wait. Anybody ever think about what would fix the world? Like, truly. Like, no band-aids. How could we fundamentally fix some things for humans? Period. Like, nothing else, just humanitarian aid, right? Like, how could we really do that? And I realized something. If you had unlimited energy, you could make unlimited amounts of fresh water out of the ocean, and you could turn all 7 continents into paradises. And if the energy was free, and if you had just a few people that were willing to work the machines to make sure they were maintained, the entire world could benefit from just fresh water and electricity where they are. That was my first thought. It was the first thing that I started working on. Like, how do we have people living in tribes in dirt huts, wearing Nike shirts, and walking 5 miles to go get their water from a well? Why is that true? You ever notice these people are real desolate and there's so much sunlight in the air, but they can't figure out electricity? So I figured out electricity. And then I free shared it out into the world almost 8 years ago. What's funny about it is you ain't seen it. And the more that I've thought about it, the more I've come to the conclusion that somebody else used it, and you're still getting charged the same amount of money for the same power that's no longer cost them anything to produce. And when I realized that 0 point energy was being used, and probably off my fucking design, and they hadn't free shared it with the world, even though I'd free shared it with the world, and the power system hasn't changed at all whatsoever. Price has gone up for electricity. figured I'd make a video about it and tell you exactly what's going on, what happened, why it happened. And it won't matter. This isn't a page that has a bunch of people on it. This is buried. This is buried knowledge. You'd have to go through all the videos to understand. You need to watch this one in order. And in watching this one in order, you understood way more than I said. So now that we're 5 minutes into the video, and I've made very boastful announcements. Let's see if I'm a liar. I'm sorry, I'm congested. So, almost 10 years ago now, I was watching a science video. I like to watch science videos. Action reaction. That's what science is to me. The whys of why it does it. Not how it's created or why the molecules are even there. We're not there on science. But action reaction. The gladiator school of molecules. I was watching this science video, and this asshole, and I call him an asshole because he's so damn smart, and yet his video was so basic, and he used no higher learning language. He used none of that crap that people need to feel superior and smart by using. I'm not even going to get into it. I don't have time to attack scientists this morning and their bullshit. You guys are a cult just like everybody else, and you know it. I was watching this guy, and he had this big 55-gallon drum sitting on a stand with a flame going underneath it, and the barrel was full of water. So he started heating it up, and he's heating it up, and it's getting boiling. You can see it boiling out of the hole in the top, right? It's boiling water out. He's got it hot, so he turns the flame off, and he caps that hole. And then he took a hose, and he started just dumping cold water onto the top of the thing and all over the top of it. And he crushed that 55 gallon bin. He crushed it. It crushed itself from atmospheric pressure change. This is very important. You should write this down. Atmospheric pressure change. And so when I seen him do it, immediately my mind went to the sky. And I tried to examine as much as we understood about weather. And we don't really understand why it happens. We get the reactions, right? And atmospheric pressure changes are what causes tornadoes, tsunamis, fucking hailstorms. It's like the primordial soup to get our weather started. Atmospheric pressure, it makes everything move. The pushing against each other at different pressures and causing different things to go different ways. This is just our basic. And it blew my mind that there was this much energy naturally happening in the atmosphere at all times. And I mean, like, it's incalculable. So immediately I was like, well, I need to harness that. There's got to be water and energy in there somewhere that I can use somehow to make exactly what I'm dreaming of happen. But how? I don't know if it was a download innovation. I don't know if it was a gift from the angels. The devil made me do it. Or I just came up with an original thought. But I figured out how to capture and harness atmospheric pressure changes. The machine costs under $1,000 to build. And it produces somewhere in the amount of 15 to 30 times the amount of energy put into it is put out. And that's on an average scale without scaling up, which would then add zeros to the output. So here it is. I'm going to give you the base model. I'm going to give you the base idea. I'm going to tell you what's sitting in your electric company right now. And I'm going to apologize in person. because I was being lazy. And I've never wanted recognition for a damn thing ever. I still don't. And I've never wanted to be in anybody's spotlight. I never wanted to be known. I never want to be famous. I never want to be rich. Never. I've always had exactly what I needed to take the next step forward, regardless of if I had money or not. So it doesn't matter. It's fun, but it doesn't matter. So let me explain to you the machine. For you that have ears to listen, please write this down. So you know those old silicone bongs? You know, it's just a tube, and it's got where the down stem goes in. We flip it upside down, down stem goes in the bong tube, right? And here's your tube, you inhale, right? Bong. Of course it's a bong. Of course I created free energy out of a bong. So, it's a three-piece system. And the inner workings. This is the engine, as it were. A silicone bong upside down, right? With the down stem. The bottom of the silicone bong, it's sealed to a container about like this. It's just a little water heater. That's it. You know exactly how many volts it takes to make your water heater. Now what's important is at 212 degrees, water becomes steam. Right? Yeah. 212 degrees. Water becomes steam. So the point of this is to heat the water up to 210 degrees. 208 to 210 degrees at all times. There's only one reason that this exists. And remember, it's connected so it can drain from the bong. And you're like, why? It's already upside down. It's not holding water. Just pay attention. So you have a container that's heating the water to 210 degrees. You have a secondary shaft coming off it at an angle that tapers as you get up into the bong and fits in that little side nozzle, okay? There's a diode at the bottom of this little side chamber going up to the bong from the water heater, okay? There's a diode in there. And what happens is the 210 degree water gets sprayed onto the diode, which creates steam immediately, continuously, at all times. Now we're talking about a steam engine, but we're not, and you'll see what I mean. So it rushes into the bong. It fills the bong up and expands it as much as possible, the absolute limits of the silicone and how far it can expand. About a half an inch. What happens is in the center of the bong going down, there's a diode of Freon, like you find in refrigerator unit. And every half a millisecond, it clicks on and off. On, off, on, off, on, off. Now, the steam's continually expanding the cylinder to the maximum. And every time that diode of Freon clicks on, the center of the thing changes. The water slows down because of the coldness. It turns back into liquid instead of being steam. The outer edge is still steam and expanding, but all of a sudden, the center is no longer expanding, it's contracting. And when it does that, it contracts the sides of the silicone, half an inch. And the water that's no longer steam drains right out down the bottom and back into the heater, and it continues on the cycle. It takes about 12 watts to make this run, 14 watts. Now let me tell you why it's free energy. I need to produce 14 watts to make that perpetual motion happen without me needing to add into it, correct? And they state that you can't add into something and get more back than you put in, correct? Correct. Even though if you have sex with a woman and successfully get her pregnant, you get more back than you put in, correct? Correct. It's okay though. There's nothing in the world in any way, shape, or form I can use an example to prove that you're full of shit and that your law of physics is wrong. You just can't make the math work on it. So around this little engine, right? This little engine that could. Around the cylinder itself is a chassis. On the chassis are just pieces of plastic. And all the way around, now let's say we're looking down. So now you got a circle, right? The water's going that way. And you got a square around the circle. And in that square, banks, like this thick. And they're standing like this tall, right? So you've got your bong, and then you've got all these little pistons coming off it, all the way around, 360 up and down like rows, all the way up and down this expanding and contracting contraption. And set in between it where all these little rods go, right? On each side of the bank, in between the rods, or on either side of the rod, it's crankshafts. And as it moves, it cranks it. And as it moves back, it cranks it the rest of the way. And every half a millisecond, it cranks that crank one time. Now, you got to get old school to understand crankshaft electricity. And you could even upgrade my technology and use static electricity the same way that you use crankshaft electricity with this design. Same way. And you could scale this up as big as you wanted. Not a lot of moving parts. The system to take on the electricity and transfer it to a transistor, it's all the same. Nothing changes. The only difference is you just plug my machine in where you used to plug something else in to get the energy. You literally could take this machine and scale it up and power an entire city with like half a gallon of water. Do you know how much steam is in half a gallon of water? Do you know how much volume you can fill up with steam with a half a gallon of water? Bet you don't, because you never thought about it. This machine's applicable except in outer space. It's why it takes gravity to make this machine work. That's why I already am onto a new one. I already have a new one. I have some new technology and some new ideas that building proofs a concept to be nothing. The one that I just spoke to you about, all you have to do is understand how to weld metal, how to run basic wiring, and you have to go buy a silicone bong. They already pre-make them for you. I'm sure you could do it with your own high heat silicone machine and adjust the ratios to get more electricity out of it. I also believe that you could increase the diode ratio and somehow get just a little bit faster of a heartbeat out of this machine. And since everything's heavy molded plastics and high heat silicone, and since it's completely sealed up, the wear and tear is almost nil. The pieces that need to be replaced are absolutely 3D printer worthy, so easy to do it, you just laugh. And it'd take you probably about 75 years to use up the water you have inside to make it inefficient, which means you just have to replace the water every once in a while. So if a 10-inch one will put off like 400 watts, what does a 10-foot one do? The original plan was to just sell this to Africa for like $100. I have to take a fair energy exchange, but just give it to Africa. Here you guys go. Take this electricity, make fresh water, turn this place into a fucking paradise, and laugh at the rest of the world. Therefore, because I did that and I gave it away to Africa, then guess what happens? The rest of the world, who's greedy as fuck and can't stand that anybody has anything they don't have, would scream to have the same technology. And the next thing you know, we'd have free power. Nobody could fucking say anything about it. Guess why? How are you going to charge me when I can go build it myself out in my garage? I couldn't believe that my invention didn't already change the world. And then I realized they just took it and used it and didn't give a fuck. It's just like using electrolysis to make hydrogen gas and using that as the combustible to make your engines work. The second that hit mainstream, the fact that everybody didn't shut down and switch over to that should tell you they're never going to. They're never going to do it. They're going to ruin the world before they give up $1. So now I'm coming up with new technology based on my findings and my studies. I got some doozies too. I'm still working on the proof of concepts. I'd hate to think that you would think that I'd waste anybody's time. I don't waste time. I do things. That don't make me special. It just makes me me. It don't make me better than anybody else. It just means I saw a different way to help. So if you watch this video and you got a smart friend who's a physicist or an engineer, tell them about this. Share it with them. Watch what happens. Go find somebody smart if you disagree with me and see if they disagree with me. I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'd love to hear your opinions. But this machine's already been built. It's been in the world for years now, and none of you have ever heard about it. And it upsets me to think that in my laziness, I took a really, really good idea that could help a lot of people and just left it for somebody else to deal with. There's very few times in my life when I haven't dealt with a situation that was mine. Very few times. I've regretted every one of them. So now you know. Now you can make fun of me all you want. Now I'm not just a dumb guy that knows a bunch of philosophy and has a bunch of great ideas. I'm also an inventor, and I already broke through the barrier of free energy. And I've barely even started. You guys should pay attention to Terrence Howard. He thinks he's reinvented the wheel, but what he's really done is started a dialogue about science that's going to lead to some conclusions that he doesn't have a clue about. And it's not because he's not highly intelligent. What a smart man to understand patterns. It's what he's smart at is patterns. Don't let him lie to you. That man can see patterns. But his technology, it's just a mirror. And he doesn't know it. You don't know it. And I might even sound crazy saying it, but it's just a mirror. And the second somebody stops looking in the mirror and looks at what the mirror is, that's when science for the whole world's going to change. And you heard it from me right now. I'm telling you, without a shadow of a doubt, the whole world is going to have its mind blown when we start having conversations about what he's actually stumbled upon. And it's got the scientific community fucking shook. Do you know what happens when you can successfully stabilize a molecule and it stays the exact same molecule without needing to be interacted with anymore? We can finally make water. If you don't understand the significance of being able to make water, you might be on the wrong page.